You believe you are the master of your own mind, making logical decisions based on data and strategy. But Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman has proven that 95% of your choices are actually made by a lazy, irrational, and emotional agent living inside your head that you don't even know exists. If you do not learn to identify and control this agent, it will inevitably make a mistake that will cost you your fortune, your reputation, or your business. Welcome to Clean Slate Audiobook. Today, we are going to rewire your decision-making process with the insights from Thinking Fast and Slow. To understand why smart leaders make stupid mistakes, we must first introduce the two characters that live inside your brain. Psychologists call them System 1 and System 2, but for the purpose of this analysis, let's call them the autopilot and the pilot. System 1 is the autopilot. It is fast, automatic, frequent, emotional, stereotypic, and subconscious. It operates effortlessly. When you see a face and instantly know it is angry, that is System 1. When you drive a car on an empty road without thinking, that is System 1. When you answer 4 to 2 plus 2, that is System 1. It is a machine designed for survival. It is always on, it never sleeps, it scans the environment for threats and opportunities constantly. System 2 is the pilot. It is slow, effortful, infrequent, logical, calculating, and conscious. System 2 is who you think you are. It is the voice in your head that plans the future, solves complex math problems, and compares investment portfolios. System 2 believes it is the hero of the story. It believes it is in charge. But Kahneman reveals a terrifying truth. System 2 is a supporting character who thinks he is the lead. The real boss of your life is the autopilot. Here is the fundamental problem that every CEO faces. System 2. Your logical strategic brain is extremely lazy. Thinking requires energy, literally. It burns glucose. The brain constitutes only 2% of the body's weight, but consumes 20% of its energy. Because of this, your biology follows the law of least effort. If there are several ways to achieve the same goal, people will eventually gravitate to the least demanding course of action. Your brain wants to save energy. It wants to coast. So, whenever possible, System 2 shuts down and lets System 1 drive the car. Let me prove it to you with a classic puzzle. Listen carefully. A bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? A number came to your mind. The number, of course, is 10 cents. The distinctive mark of this easy puzzle is that it evokes an answer that is intuitive, appealing, and wrong. Do the math. If the ball costs 10 cents, then the total cost will be $1.20, 10 cents for the ball and 1.1 for the bat, not $1.10. The correct answer is 5 cents. If you got it wrong, don't worry. More than 50% of students at Harvard, MIT, and Princeton gave the intuitive, incorrect answer. Why? Because System 1 saw a simple pattern and jumped to a conclusion. And System 2, your logical pilot, was too lazy to check the math. It simply endorsed the answer from System 1. This is the danger. System 1 provides the suggestions, and System 2 blindly signs the checks. In business, this bat and ball problem happens every day. It just looks different. It looks like a flashy marketing pitch that feels right. It looks like a charismatic candidate who seems perfect in the interview. It looks like a stock trend that can only go up. Your intuition screams the answer, and your logic is too lazy to verify it. This leads us to the concept of cognitive ease versus cognitive strain. When you are in a state of cognitive ease, you are likely to be in a good mood, like what you see, believe what you hear, trust your intuitions, and feel that the current situation is familiar and safe. But you are also likely to be casual and superficial in your thinking. System 1 is in control. When you are in a state of cognitive strain, you are likely to be vigilant and suspicious. You invest more effort in what you are doing. You feel less comfortable. You make fewer errors. But you are also less creative and less intuitive. System 2 is in control. Most leaders pride themselves on being decisive. They want to make things look easy, but easy is often a trap. Kahneman discusses the invisible gorilla experiment. In this famous study, observers are asked to watch a video of a basketball game and count the number of passes made by the white team. This task requires intense focus. It engages System 2 completely. In the middle of the video, a woman wearing a gorilla suit walks onto the court, thumps her chest, and walks off. She is visible for 9 seconds. Thousands of people have watched this video, and about half of them do not notice anything unusual. They are blind to the gorilla. And even worse, they are blind to their own blindness. Why? Because System 2 was busy counting. When your logical brain is hyper-focused on one metric like quarterly revenue or user growth, you become blind to the obvious threat standing right in front of you. You miss the cultural toxicity in your company. You miss the shifting market trends. You miss the gorilla. This biological weakness culminates in a phenomenon called ego depletion. The term is misleading. It is not about arrogance. It is about energy. Exercising self-control and engaging in deliberate thought draws on a limited pool of mental energy. Once that pool is empty, you are depleted. When you are depleted, you cannot use System 2. You revert to System 1. You become impulsive, you become prejudiced, you follow the path of least resistance. Consider the famous study of 8 parole judges in Israel. These judges spend their days reviewing applications for parole. It is a difficult, high-stakes job. The default decision is denial. Approving parole requires more thinking, more risk assessment, and more energy. The researchers plotted the proportion of approved paroles against the time of day. The results were shocking. In the morning, after breakfast, the approval rate was 65%. As the morning went on and the judges got hungry and tired, the approval rate dropped steadily to near zero. Then, they took a lunch break. They ate food. They restored their glucose. Immediately after lunch, the approval rate jumped back up to 65%. And then, as the afternoon wore on, it dropped back to zero. What does this mean for you, the leader? It means that justice is not blind. Justice is hungry. It means that your strategic decisions are heavily influenced by your blood sugar levels. If you are trying to make a critical decision about a merger, a lawsuit, or a layoff at 4 p.m. after a long day of meetings, you are not a CEO. You are a tired biological machine running on autopilot. You will choose the path of least resistance. You will say no because it is safer, or you will say yes to a bad deal just to end the meeting. So, what is the lesson of part 1? Recognize that you are 2 people. You are the pilot, but the pilot is often asleep at the wheel. To survive in the business world, you must learn to manage your mental energy as aggressively as you manage your capital. Never trust your intuition on complex problems involving numbers or statistics. Never make a bet the company decision when you are depleted. And always remember the bat and the ball. The obvious answer is usually the expensive mistake. Let's talk about negotiation. Most people think negotiation is an art of persuasion. Daniel Kahneman proves it is actually a science of perception. And at the heart of this science lies a cognitive glitch called the anchoring effect. Imagine I ask you 2 questions. First, is the tallest redwood tree in California taller or shorter than 1,200 feet? Second, what is your best guess about the height of the tallest redwood? Now, imagine I ask a different group the same questions, but I change one number. Is the tallest redwood taller or shorter than 180 feet? And then, guess the height. Kahneman and his partner Amos Tversky ran this exact experiment. The results were disturbing. The group that saw the high number, 1,200 feet, guessed an average height of 844 feet. The group that saw the low number, 180 feet, guessed an average height of 282 feet. The difference between the 2 groups was massive, but here is the terrifying part. The number I gave them was completely arbitrary. It had no relation to reality. Yet, their brains grabbed onto that number, the anchor, and refused to let go. This is System 1-inch action. It is a suggestion machine. When it sees a number, it treats it as a suggestion of truth. It adjusts its estimate, but it never adjusts enough. It stays tethered to the anchor. In the business world, this effect is weaponized against you every single day. Walk into a luxury store. You see a handbag for $10,000. You think, that is insane. But then, Right next to it, you see a handbag for $2,000. Suddenly, $2,000 looks reasonable. It looks like a bargain. It is not a bargain. It is a $2,000 bag, but your brain has been anchored by the $10,000 price tag. The first number manipulated your perception of value. In salary negotiations, the person who says the first number wins. Traditional advice says, never show your hand first, let them make an offer. Kahneman says this is terrible advice. If you let the other side set the anchor, you are fighting an uphill battle. If they offer you $50,000, your brain unknowingly accepts $50,000 as the baseline. Even if you negotiate up to $60,000, you feel like you won. But if you had walked in and anchored the conversation at $100,000, a final settlement of $80,000 would feel like a compromise to you, but a victory to them. By going first, you set the reality of the room. You force their System 2 to work hard to adjust away from your number. And as we know, System 2 is lazy. It will likely settle close to your anchor. But what if you are on the receiving end? What if the enemy drops a massive anchor on you? Example: you want to buy a company. The seller demands $10 million. You know it is worth $5 million. Most negotiators will react with outrage. They will start arguing. Kahneman warns, do not engage. If you start arguing about why $10 million is too high, you are validating their anchor. You are playing in their sandbox. Instead, you must create a scene. You must storm out. You must laugh. You must reset the cognitive table. You must tell your System 2, this number is noise. It is not data. You have to physically and mentally reject the anchor before you can begin the real negotiation. If you cannot verify the source of a number, treat it as a virus. Do not let it enter your calculation. Now we move to the most expensive psychological trap in the history of business. It destroys more capital than any recession. It is called the sunk cost fallacy, driven by a primitive instinct known as loss aversion. Let's look at your portfolio. You bought a stock at $100. It drops to $80, then to $50. The news is bad. The fundamentals have changed. If you had cash today, you would never buy this company. But you don't sell. You hold. You tell yourself, I will wait until it gets back to 100, then I will sell. Why? Because realizing a loss is painful. Kahneman discovered that the psychological pain of losing $100 is twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining $100. We are not profit seekers, we are loss avoiders. We are biologically wired to fight to the death to avoid a loss. This leads to the sunk cost fallacy. You have already spent the money. It is gone. It is sunk. But your System 1 refuses to accept this. It thinks that if you keep investing time and money, you can somehow save the investment. This is how leaders bankrupt their companies. They pour millions into a failing project because they have already spent millions on it. They don't want to admit failure. They don't want to close the account in the red. Consider the famous story of Intel in the 1980s. Intel was a memory chip company, but Japanese competitors were crushing them. They were losing money every day. The founders, Andy Grove and Gordon Moore, were paralyzed. They had built the company on memory chips. It was their identity. One day, Andy Grove asked a question that saved the company. He asked, if we got kicked out and the board brought in a new CEO, what do you think he would do? Moore answered immediately, he would get us out of memory chips. Grove stared at him and said, why shouldn't you and I walk out the door, come back in and do it ourselves? That was the moment Intel switched to microprocessors. That was the moment they became a $1 trillion giant. How did they do it? They used a mental hack to bypass loss aversion. They pretended to be new CEOs. A new CEO has no emotional attachment to the past. A new CEO has no sunk costs. A new CEO looks only at the future. This is the ultimate test for any leader. Look at your projects. Look at your employees. Look at your investments. Ask yourself, if I took over this job today with zero history, would I hire this person? Would I launch this product? Would I buy this stock? If the answer is no, then you must kill it. Do not look at the price you paid. The market does not care what you paid. The market only cares what it is worth today. System 1 wants to repair the past. System 2 must be disciplined enough to cut the rope and build the future. Be ruthless with your past self. He made the mistake. Do not let him force you to keep paying for it. We have arrived at the most dangerous territory of the mind. This is where leaders are made, and this is where fortunes are lost. We are going to talk about the illusion of understanding and the narrative fallacy. Look at the history of your company. Look at the biography of Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. What do you see? You see a clear path. You see a vision. You see a series of brilliant decisions that led inevitably to success. Daniel Kahneman says, "You are hallucinating." System 1 is a storytelling machine. It hates uncertainty. It hates randomness. So, when it looks at the past, it edits the movie. It deletes the luck. It highlights the skill. It creates a straight line from cause to effect that makes sense. We call this hindsight bias. In hindsight, everything looks obvious. Of course Google would become a giant. Of course the 2008 financial crisis would happen. But this is a lie. In 1998, the founders of Google were willing to sell their company for $1 million. They were rejected. If that buyer had said, yes, Google as we know it would not exist, was that skill? No. That was luck. But CEOs do not like to talk about luck. Business schools do not teach luck. We teach strategy. We teach the 7 habits of highly effective people. We create a halo effect. If a company is profitable, we say the CEO is a genius, the culture is strong, and the strategy is brilliant. A year later, if the market shifts and the company loses money, the same magazines will say the CEO is rigid, the culture is toxic, and the strategy is flawed. The CEO did not change. The culture did not change. The outcome changed. And because the outcome changed, our System 1 rewrote the story to explain it. This is the illusion of validity. Kahneman studied stock pickers on Wall Street. These are men who are paid millions of dollars to predict the future. They believe they have skill. They believe they can read the charts. Kahneman analyzed their results over 20 years. He found that the correlation between a trader's success one year and his success the next year was essentially zero. They were rolling dice. But they did not feel like they were rolling dice. They felt like they were working. They analyzed data. They held meetings. They felt the illusion of skill. When Kahneman told them this, that they were no better than a chimp throwing darts at a newspaper, they ignored him. Why? Because their livelihood depended on the illusion. As a leader, you must be terrified of this illusion. When you hire a star manager from a competitor, are you hiring skill, or are you hiring someone who was just in the right place at the right time? When you launch a product based on historical data, are you analyzing facts, or are you analyzing a story you told yourself? The world is far more random than you are willing to admit. A good decision can lead to a bad outcome due to bad luck. A bad decision can lead to a good outcome due to good luck. Do not judge your managers by their results alone. That is shallow. Judge them by their process. Judge them by how they use System 2. If you reward lucky idiots and punish unlucky strategists, you will fill your company with gamblers who will eventually destroy you. Now, let's apply this to the future. Every leader has a plan, a 5-year plan, a product roadmap, a budget, and almost every plan is a fantasy. This is the planning fallacy. Kahneman discovered that when we plan for the future, we almost always display an insane level of optimism. We overestimate benefits and underestimate costs. We assume that the future will go according to the best case scenario. Look at home renovations. Look at government infrastructure projects. Look at IT software launches. How many of them finish on time and under budget? Almost none. In 2002, a survey of American homeowners who had remodeled their kitchens found that, on average, they expected the job to cost $18,000. The actual cost was $38,000. Double. Why does this happen? Are we stupid? No. We are trapped in the inside view. The inside view is when you look at your specific project. You look at your team. You look at your plan. You say, my team is smart. We have a good plan. We will avoid mistakes. System 1 focuses on what it knows. It ignores what it doesn't know. It ignores the unknown unknowns. It ignores the possibility that your lead engineer might get sick. It ignores the possibility that the supplier might go bankrupt. It ignores the possibility of a new regulation. You cannot imagine these specific problems, so you assume they won't happen. This is a recipe for disaster. To cure the planning fallacy, you must force your brain to adopt the outside view. This is also called reference class forecasting. Ignore the details of your specific project. Forget that it is unique. Instead, ask a simple statistical question. In the history of our industry, how many projects like this one have succeeded? How long did they take on average? This is the base rate. If you are opening a restaurant, do not look at your delicious menu. Look at the statistic that 60% of restaurants fail in the first 3 years. That is your base rate. If you are launching a software update and the average delay in your industry is 40%, you should add 40% to your timeline immediately. When Kahneman was writing a textbook, he asked his team how long it would take. They said, 2 years. Then he asked an expert, how long does it usually take a group like ours to finish a book? The expert thought about it and said, about 7 years, and 40% of them never finish. Kahneman's team was shocked. They thought they were different. They thought they were special. They were not. The book took 8 years. System 1 loves the inside view because it feels good. It feels confident. System 2 must impose the outside view. It is painful. It feels like pessimism, but it is the only way to protect your capital. If you present a budget to the board that does not include a massive buffer for unknown unknowns, you are lying to them. You are selling them a best-case scenario that has a less than 1% chance of happening. We have stripped away your illusions. We have shown you that your intuition is flawed, your confidence is often baseless, and your plans are overly optimistic. So, what do you do? How do you lead in a world of uncertainty? Kahneman gives us one final, powerful weapon. It was developed by the psychologist Gary Klein. It is called the pre-mortem. In medicine, a times post-mortem times is an autopsy. You cut open the body to find out why the patient died. In business, we usually do this too late. We hold a lessons learned meeting after the project has already failed and the money is gone. The pre-mortem moves this process to the beginning, before you have spent a single dollar. Here is how it works. You are about to sign a major contract. You are about to launch a new product. You gather your team in a room. You ask them to silence their phones. And then you say this exact sentence. Imagine that it is 1 year from now. We have implemented the plan as it exists today. The outcome was a total disaster. The project has failed completely. Please take 10 minutes to write a brief history of that disaster. Notice what happened here. You did not ask, what times might times go wrong? If you ask what might go wrong, System 1 will say, nothing, we are great. The optimism bias will protect the plan. But by stating, it times has times failed, you break the connection to the present. You force the brain to switch from prospective mode, planning, to retrospective mode, explaining. Suddenly, the polite silence in the room will break. The introverted engineer will say, well, if it failed, it was probably because the server couldn't handle the load. The sales manager will say, if we failed, it's because our pricing model was too complicated for the mid-market. The marketing director will say, it's because a competitor launched a copycat product in Q3. Suddenly, you have a list of real, tangible threats that nobody was willing to talk about because they didn't want to be seen as negative. The pre-mortem legitimizes doubt. It rewards the people who can spot the flaws. It turns pessimism into strategic foresight. Once you have this list of causes of death, you can go back to your plan. You can strengthen the servers. You can simplify the pricing. You can prepare a counter strategy for the competitor. Or, in some cases, you might look at the list and realize, this project is doomed. There are too many ways to die. And you kill it right there. That is a victory. Killing a bad project on paper costs $0. Killing it in the real world costs millions. This brings us to the conclusion of our journey through the CEO's brain. Daniel Kahneman has shown us that intelligence is not enough. You can be the smartest person in the room and still fall into the traps of System 1. You can be a genius and still be anchored by a price tag. You can be a visionary and still be blinded by the planning fallacy. True leadership is not about trusting your gut. It is about building a system, an organization, a culture that protects you from your own biology. It is about slowing down when you want to speed up. It is about seeking the outside view when the inside view looks perfect. It is about having the courage to kill your own ideas before they kill your company. The next time you face a critical decision, stop. Ask yourself, which system is driving the car right now? Is it the drunk autopilot? Or is it the sober pilot? Thinking is slow. Thinking is painful. Thinking consumes energy. But in the high-stakes game of business, thinking is the only asset that truly matters. Do not just react, think. This has been the summary of Thinking, Fast and Slow. Now, go wake up your pilot.